After all the audio equipment videos, we concentrate on that again, what light color shadow is about, photography. In this video we take a look on a feature which you'll find on all pro cameras, the exposure value correction. If you ever have wondered about some buttons on your camera body, there is one which you will find on almost every camera, the so-called exposure compensation button. It is marked with a plus and minus symbol, so you can darken or brighten your exposure via an easy way when you are unhappy with the measured exposure, what the metering did set. That's it already roughly set. To go deeper, the exposure compensation has its own value, the exposure value, in short EV. The exposure of a photo has the EV of 0.0. So let's say we have a photo with the exposure time of 1/160th of a second. The 1/160th is our EV 0. When we set the camera now on an EV of +2, then our image gets visibly brighter and the exposure time is finally 1/50th of a second because it is set up to the factor by 2. 1/50th because there is no shutter speed of 1/40th of a second. Of course there are smaller increments like an EV of +0.7. In this case we got an exposure time of 1/100th. The EV of +0.7 thus corresponds to the fraction of 2/3. An EV of 0.3, what is displayed in the camera, is then a half stop. Then of course if you set the EV in the minus, the exposure becomes shorter. An EV of -1 would set the exposure from 1/160th to 1/320th of a second. On Nikon cameras is a meter showing which value is set up with the increments and the full EV steps. 0.3 is the smallest, then 0.7 and then a full EV stop and so on. But it can also be changed to half steps in the settings menu. And last but not least, there's also an easy exposure compensation function on Nikon cameras what allows to change the exposure without using the exposure compensation button. So this is like you are in manual mode. So what is all that good for? The compensation allows a quick and easy way to correct the exposure of an image. If the metering of the camera was off, it is a comfortable way to correct it. This can happen when photographing snowy landscapes, high contrast scenarios like sunset or sunrise, or dark scenes with very bright highlights. Like in this example where for my taste the fog is just too grey in the first shot. To take benefit of this, you have to use the camera in aperture priority, shutter priority or in program mode. In these camera modes, the exposure compensation can be used. Nikon users have to hold this button and use the rear dial to set the wanted EV. Canon models have also a dedicated button for this, and on Fuji cameras there is even a dedicated dial for EV. On Nikon cameras you will find the same symbol on the display, which shows that the compensation is activated. And that's it already. Just take a shot, check if you are happy with the exposure. If not, use this function to compensate it. At the end it is similar to take photos as in manual mode and try to find the right exposure. The result will be the same, but of course in manual mode the exposure time is not automatically set, but the exposure meter on the display, respectively in the viewfinder, can help a lot to find the right exposure time. And if you're still feeling unsure if you hit the right exposure time, check the histogram on the display after the image is taken. When the main part is in the center, you are on a good way that the exposure is correct. So far, a quick and easy explanation of a very useful function you find on almost every camera. For more photography topics you can check Lightcolorshadow.com, where you can find other useful guides and tips. That's it so far. I'm looking forward to welcome you in one of my next videos, and until then, good light for you and until next time. Bye bye.